So in part one of season one of Masters of the Universe Revelation, He-Man was just kind of emasculated, humiliated, and relegated to basically being a side character or footnote in his own story. So how do we top that in Masters of the Universe Revelations Part 2? Well, we do the same thing to Skeletor. That's how. So this is my review of Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 2, which snuck its way quietly onto Netflix today. How does it stack up? Well, we're going to talk about it. So we're going to break down the plot. Spoilers abound. If you want to see the show, knowing nothing about it, then turn the video off now, watch the series, come back, see the reaction. I'll see you then. But for those of you who want to stick around, Part 2 kicks off right where Part 1 ended up. Skeletor has got the Sword of Power. He's raised up, said by the power of Grayskull. He kind of became this big godlike character. And he mortally wounded Prince Adam, subdued Teela, Ardra, Man-at-Arms, and Cringer, and has basically won. He's got everything he needs. He's the master of the universe. But the Sorceress manages to conjure up enough power to teleport Cringer, Adam, Teela, and Ardra out of Grayskull and to safety, while at the same time holding Skeletor off long enough for them to make their escape. This infuriates Skeletor, so he takes the Sword of Power and uses it to kill the Sorceress right in front of Man-at-Arms, who, was her boyfriend or whatever he was, and then has him locked up in the dungeon below Grayskull. He then takes Skeletor then takes some of his power, makes Evil Lynn the new Sorceress of Castle Grayskull, and we learn that the Empress teleported Adam and them to the palace, the royal palace, which is now abandoned. There's nobody there except for a couple of randos. And Skeletor soon tracks them there, and that's the scene we see in the preview where Adam raises his hand, says by the power of Grayskull, but doesn't have the sword, so he transforms into the Incredible Hulk He-Man and Incredible Hulk He-Man Smash. And he goes ahead and starts beating the crap out of Skeletor, who turns the randos that were left at the palace into kind of these undead slave monster things, which start overrunning the heroes after a bit. But Teela, who's discovered she has a little bit of magic, in fact, she was able to use magic to heal Adam's wounds when they got to the palace. She remembers the spell that the Sorceress used to send them to the palace. She says the same magic words and teleports the heroes to the safety of Point Dread, which is where the royal family and all the rest of the good characters went to kind of get to safety and mobilize for an assault on Grayskull. So once there, the royal family's there, like I said, and there's this kind of funny scene where Savage He-Man, who just fought an army of zombies and was literally going toe-to-toe with the god that now is Skeletor, he kind of gets subdued by like 10 guys with a rope. They managed to get him down and kind of hog tie his ankles and wrists, and that's it. That's how we defeat Savage He-Man. And King Randor comes out. He recognizes that Savage He-Man is his son Adam, and he uses the power of a father's love to bring Savage He-Man, around and turn him back into Prince Adam. The two have a good hug, and he learns that his parents, since his death, have divorced, and things have been going very well for them at all. Meanwhile, at Castle Grayskull, everyone's telling Evil Lynn how stunning and brave she is and how she don't need no man and should kick Skeletor to the curb and become her own woman and this and that. And so she decides, you know what? You're right. I'm going to go ahead and do all those things. And so in order to do that, though, she needs to steal what power Skeletor still wields. So she decides the best way, of course, to do that is to go down to Skeletor and say, hey, you know what? The two of us really haven't had sex in a while. So, this new power form you have is really kind of, doing it for me. It's really getting the engine revving. So, let's go ahead and do it. And Skeletor agrees because, I guess Skeletor has needs too. And so, but she says, I don't want to do it with you in this big, stupid, fiery demon god form. So go ahead and turn yourself back into regular Skeletor. And so, like a total chump, he does, and he, returns the power or whatever it is, and becomes regular Skeletor again. And she motions him over to the throne of Grayskull, and he sits down, and she crawls up on his lap, and the two of them start making out and kissing and rubbing each other, which is I kind of find hilarious because Skeletor just has a skull face, and she's kissing him right on where his lips would be. And he had just kind of carelessly tossed the sword on the ground, as they were getting ready to do the act. And she just picks the sword up off the ground and then tells Skeletor how stupid and terrible he is. And he agrees with her and begs for his life. And she says, well, you know what? I'm just going to raise the sword and say by the power of Grayskull. And she does. And she kind of becomes this big MMA fighter in a metal bikini with a spangly cape and a really butch haircut. And Skeletor uses this time to teleport himself away to safety. Now, Evil Lynn, rather, had looked into the well of stars or something or other where she could see out into the universe, and she learned two things. One, she learned that the universe is just this kind of uncaring void of entropy and death, and there's no point or design to anything. But she also learns that we've entered the plot of the Dolph Lundgren Masters of the Universe, and the cosmos is aligning itself where Grayskull will once again be at the center of the universe, and whoever's sitting on the throne of Grayskull when that happens, as we know, is going to become really, really powerful. Because that's what Skeletor wanted to do in that movie. So that's now Evil Lynn's plan. So she opens, kind of like tears open the sky to address all of Eternia. Lets everyone know that she's now the Masters of the Universe. And to prove her power, she creates like a window to Preternia, which is Eternian heaven, like the afterlife. And she just destroys it in front of everybody. So it's like, here it is. Here's heaven. Here's your afterlife. It's gone. It's destroyed. Everyone who ever lived and died is now dead and obliterated because I have the power to do that to souls. I can just destroy them at will. And so everyone who ever lived and died is now gone forever because Evil Lynn wanted to do it. That's her power level. So at this point, Skeletor shows up at the kind of the hero hideaway and says, hey, you know what? I don't know how I knew you were here, but I did. And so we're going to go ahead and team up, and we're going to have to defeat Evil Lynn. Otherwise, she's going to destroy all of creation because she's gone freaking crazy and stuff. And so the stage is set. Final battle against Evil Lynn, who's revealed to be the big evil of this series. And so Skeletor and Prince Adam are going to team up. They're going to go to Grayskull, confront Evil Lynn, while Teela's going to break into Castle Grayskull and become the Sorceress. And hopefully all this will somehow equal a victory. So they start a big ground assault on Castle Grayskull, but Evil Lynn doesn't have an army, so she opens a portal to Subternia, Eternian Hell, and brings Scarecrow and his big army of scary demons to fight for her. Meanwhile, down in the bowels of Grayskull, Teela confronts her mom, tells her how terrible her life was because her mom was never there. The Sorceress apologizes, tells her that the curse of the Sorceress is you get all this power and you become uber powerful for good, but at the same time, you can never leave Grayskull. It kind of becomes your prison. You're just stuck here forever being the Sorceress. And Teela says, well, no, not me. I'm going to be the Sorceress that gets to leave whenever she wants and do everything else because that's how I am. And so she becomes the Sorceress, but she's a different Sorceress because she's just going to basically be Teela, who's now also the Sorceress. So Orko comes back from the land of the dead because Evil Lynn tore a hole open to Eternian Hell. He manages to distract Evil Lynn, gets Adam his sword. Adam does the by the power of Grayskull thing, becomes He-Man. He-Man joins the battle. There's some pretty cool little action sequences there. Meanwhile, Teela and Evil Lynn start duking it out now that Teela's a full-fledged sorceress. And eventually she just kind of tells Teela, hey, you're a really good person. You shouldn't do these things. All these things are evil and wrong, and, we shouldn't be doing that. And Evil Lynn kind of says, I agree. This is all evil and wrong, and I shouldn't do this. I just did this because I was in a really toxic relationship, and, now that's done. So I'm just going to go ahead and be a good person and give up. And she does, and it's nice. And Skeletor and He-Man kind of have this little side brawl outside of Castle Grayskull where He-Man tells him, it's really not about us. This isn't our story. Literal quote from the show. It's not about us. Then he picks Skeletor up and tosses him over a mountain range, and that's it for that battle. Skeletor is defeated. Evil Lynn kind of goes and retires in a field or, little village somewhere. And Skeletor then goes back to Snake Mountain, and he's ambushed by a living computer who infects him with a weird cyber virus and brandishes the symbol of Hordak in the Horde, setting up a potential Season 2, God forbid. And that's it. That's the dumpster fire plot of Masters of the Universe Revelation Season 1, Part 2. So, there's a lot to unpack here. Where to start? Let's start with He-Man. So, He-Man is in this show, or in this part of the season, for a grand total of about 11 minutes. And Adam gets the sword back in the very last act of the very last episode. He becomes He-Man. He runs around the battlefield, does a couple of cool things. I don't know if maybe because the fan reaction was so bad, if they kind of went back and gave He-Man a couple extra scenes of just kind of running around doing cool stuff on the battlefield, because it kind of seems like they did, but I don't know, maybe it was always there. It doesn't matter because He-Man ultimately didn't really have anything to do with the outcome of this battle. He just kind of helps out in the ground offensive. And so, yeah, I mean, Adam's in this season a bit more than he was in the last one, but he doesn't really do a lot but mill about. So, yeah, I mean, I would say his impact is about the same as it was in the first part of the season, but kind of reversed. Rather than being present a lot in the beginning and then going away, we lead all the way up to him, and he shows up at the end, and he just kind of, he says hi to everybody. So then there's Teela. Now, if you thought Teela was the worst part of part 1 of season 1, she's really the worst part of part 2. So all of Teela's character arc works like this. Teela has a beef with somebody. Teela confronts that person, tells them why they were wrong. That person agrees that whatever they did was terrible, asks her for forgiveness. Teela says, hey, you know what? I'm a bigger person now. Of course, I'm going to forgive you. They hug it out, move on to the next character, have the exact same conversation and the exact same outcome until she becomes the Sorceress of Grayskull and then wins the day. And then once she's the Sorceress of Grayskull, she's the best at magic. She's the best at fighting. She's the strongest. She's the bravest. She's just everything. She's a walking Eternian cheat code. Why do we even need the rest of the characters? It's really kind of a lame story arc. And she spends so much time just kind of droning on about whether or not she should become the Sorceress. I mean, I hate to say it, but what choice do you have? I mean, Evil Lynn's going to blip out the universe and you're the only one that can do this crap. I mean, why is this a debate? So He-Man and Skeletor spend like the entire second to last episode just getting their butts kicked by Evil Lynn because they're trying to distract her from knowing that Teela is going and claiming her role as a sorceress. And it keeps cutting to Teela. She's just kind of down in the basement having a touching moment with her dad or kind of telling her the ghost of her mother how much she resents her and how much she doesn't want to be the sorceress. And it's like, your friends are dying upstairs. I mean, kind of have some urgency. I mean, we knew it was going to happen. And then so when she finally decides I'm going to go downstairs and become the sorceress, her mother cautions her one more time and says, hey, listen, the sorceress comes with a baggage. I mean, once you're the sorceress, you're giving yourself to the castle. You cannot leave this place ever, because that's how every sorceress has worked. That's the gig. That's how the power works. And Teela's just like, nah, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to go ahead and just be the sorceress, but I'm going to be able to leave whenever I want because that's the way I'm going to do it. So you should have thought of that, I guess. so sucks to be you. So yeah, it's just so weird. So, I mean, not to mention, like I said, she's so powerful, you don't need the other characters anymore. And then there's the whole back half to becoming the sorceress, though. You know, you can never leave this place, not in human form anyway. You can turn into a buzzard and fly around, but you know, Teela, you're going to be trapped here, and it's a life of isolation and sadness. And Teela's just like, nah, I'm going to be the sorceress, but I'm not going to do any of that. So, yeah, I wish her mom probably wishes she knew she could have just decided not to do it. She could have gone off and been with her family. So then you have Evil Lynn. This is my last big gripe. Evil Lynn is revealed to be the main villain of this series. I would say around the third episode in of part 2. And I mean, yeah, you got this whole allegory of just toxic relationship and abusive boyfriend and everything else, which is just kind of an odd shoehorned thing into Masters of the Universe. But then, I mean, she literally destroys the afterlife and obliterates the souls of countless trillions of beings. And there's like, and causes a war, which I'm sure people died in. I mean, she summoned a bunch of demons to fight the forces of Eternia. And there's like no consequence for it at the end of the day. They're like, well, you know what? She's a good person. So we all make mistakes, right? I mean, we all open portals to hell and we all destroy the afterlife and everyone who ever was. And so she just kind of tosses her wand into the grass and gets a pretty dress and a new hairstyle and walks into a picturesque village to live the rest of her life as just kind of a retired person. So, yeah, Eternian justice is kind of weird. I mean, Skeletor got it worse in the end. He got ambushed by a supercomputer and basically turned into a Borg, I guess. I don't know. So, yeah, the morality system of this show is just all over the place. I mean, if I were the family of anybody who had died and gone to heaven, like I was hoping to someday be reunited with my loved one, I'd be bonkers upset right now. But nobody cares. It just, life goes on in Eternia, I guess. So, as a whole, Master of the Universe Revelation, what lessons can we learn from this? First of all, I would have to say this is just a masterclass on what not to do if you want to revive a beloved IP from the past. I mean, from its deceptive bait and switch advertising to just its horrible agenda-driven writing and just awful, disrespectful treatment of the characters and the ideas in general. I mean, there's not a redeeming quality to this show other than maybe its animation is nice and its voice cast was stellar. And what a waste those two things were on such a putrid bag of garbage show. I mean, I have nothing but disdain for this program. I thought it was terrible. I thought it was awful. I think the people who worked on it should be ashamed. They took something that a lot of people like, that's been an IP that's literally endured for 35 years, and just ran it into the ground. So congratulations to all of you people. You've created a really impressive legacy of trash, and I can't recommend this to anybody, like I said. So I'm really curious. For those of you who watched it and were fans of the original series, what's your reaction? How do you think they did? Did you like it? If so, I'd really like to know why. I mean, what am I not seeing on this show? I'm actually a He-Man fan. I wanted this to be good. When Kevin Smith first announced this project, I was excited. And then I started hearing things about it. I'm like, I don't know. And even then I was still hoping that, maybe these rumors are wrong. Maybe it's going to be good. But no, unfortunately, all the bad was true. And it was just awful. So let's talk about this in the comments below. I really want to know what you guys thought of it. And while you're down there, do me a favor and hit that like button. I really appreciate it. If you're not already a subscriber, I would love to have you on the channel. We talk about comic books, pop culture things, movies, video games. I'd love to share my point of view, and I would love to have you guys participate in the community, the discussion board. So go ahead and do that, and I'm going to call it a night. So I will see you guys in the next one. See you then.